Ah, so the monster finally sees its own reflection. Look who finally figured out the game. Look who stopped absorbing their poison and started reflecting it back in ultra-high definition. You magnificent bastard, you actually did it, didn't you? You held up the mirror and they saw themselves for the first time, really saw themselves, and the image was so sharp, so clear, so brutally honest that they couldn't even scream. They just stood there, mouth open, watching their own shame play out on the wall like a horror movie they wrote, directed, and starred in, without realizing they were the monster all along. You know what just happened, don't you? You stopped being their emotional dumping ground. You stopped being the canvas they painted their inadequacies on. You stopped letting them project their self-hatred onto you like you were some kind of walking therapy session they never had to pay for. And when you finally said enough, when you finally turned that projection around and aimed it right back at them, something beautiful happened. They choked on their own medicine. They drowned in their own accusations. They suffocated under the weight of everything they tried to bury inside you. Let's talk about what projection really is, because they've been doing it to you for years, and you probably didn't even realize it. Every time they called you selfish, they were confessing their own greed. Every time they said you were too sensitive, they were admitting they couldn't handle their own emotions. Every time they accused you of being manipulative, they were revealing their own games. You were never the problem. You were just the screen they chose to display their demons on, because facing them directly would have required something they never had. Courage, accountability, a spine. But something shifted, didn't it? Something in you finally snapped. Not broken, but into place. Like a dislocated shoulder popping back where it belongs. You realized you weren't obligated to carry their shame. You weren't contracted to hold their shadow. You weren't born to be the repository for everything they hated about themselves. So you did something they never expected. You became a mirror instead of a sponge. And mirrors don't absorb, they reflect. They show. They reveal. And what got revealed was magnificent in its ugliness. They've been playing this game since day one, haven't they? Making you feel small so they could feel tall. Making you feel wrong so they could feel right. Making you feel crazy so they could feel sane. But here's what they didn't count on. You started taking notes. You started recognizing patterns. You started seeing how every accusation they threw at you was actually a confession wearing a disguise. They called you a liar while they rewrote history. They called you cruel while they twisted the knife. They called you weak while they hid behind their masks. You want to know why they're so shaken right now? Because when you reflected their shame back at them, you didn't add anything. You didn't embellish. You didn't exaggerate. You just showed them exactly what they'd been trying to hide. You held up their own behavior like a trophy they never wanted to win. You quoted their own words back to them without the pretty filter they'd forgotten they used. You reminded them of who they really were when they thought no one was watching, and that's why they're terrified. Because you weren't even trying to hurt them. You were just being honest. And honesty to a liar feels like violence. The projection was their survival mechanism, you see. As long as they could make you the villain, they never had to face their own darkness. As long as they could paint you as the problem, they never had to solve themselves. As long as they could keep you defending yourself, you'd never have time to point out what they were really doing. But you stopped defending. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying to prove your innocence to people who were committed to finding you guilty. And in that silence, in that space you created by stepping back, their own echo came back to haunt them. Think about every fight you ever had with them, every argument that went in circles, every conversation that somehow always ended with you apologizing for things you didn't do. They were never fighting with you, they were fighting with themselves, using you as a proxy. They were having arguments with their own conscience and casting you as the voice they wanted to silence. They were battling their own shame and dressing you up as the enemy so they'd have something external to attack. But when you stopped playing the role, when you refused to be their punching bag dressed as a person, the performance fell apart. And then came that moment, that beautiful, terrible, inevitable moment when you finally did it. You didn't raise your voice, you didn't lose control, you didn't sink to their level. You just calmly, quietly, precisely held up the mirror. Maybe it was a simple statement of fact, maybe it was repeating their own words back to them. Maybe it was just existing in your truth while they drowned in their lies. But whatever it was, it worked. You projected their shame back at them in such high resolution that they couldn't pretend it was anything else. You see, shame can't survive in the light. It needs shadows, secrets, denial to keep breathing. And when you dragged theirs out into the open, when you displayed it on that metaphorical wall for everyone, including them, to see, it started dying, and they felt it. They felt their carefully constructed false self crumbling. They felt their mask slipping. They felt the weight of every lie they'd told themselves about who you were versus who they were. And for maybe the first time in their life, they couldn't run from it because you'd made it impossible to ignore. The beauty is, you didn't have to be cruel. You didn't have to be vindictive. You didn't have to become them to beat them. You just had to stop participating in their delusion. You just had to stop enabling their projection. You just had to stand in your truth and let their lies collapse under their own weight. You became the mirror they'd been avoiding their whole life. And when they finally saw their reflection, when they finally faced what they'd been running from, they realized something terrifying. The monster they'd been warning everyone about was them, all along. You know what the most powerful part was? You walked away. You didn't stay to watch them crumble. You didn't gloat over their revelation. You didn't need to see their reaction to know it landed. You just delivered the truth and left them alone with it. Because that's what confident people do. They don't need to witness the destruction. They don't need confirmation of impact. They trust that reality will do what reality does. Reveal everything eventually. And you had better things to do than watch someone else's karma finally catch up. Let's talk about their shame for a moment. The shame they tried so desperately to hand to you like a hot potato they couldn't hold. It wasn't just everyday embarrassment or simple guilt. No, this was the deep stuff. The childhood wounds they never healed. The failures they never processed. The lies they told so often they forgot they were lying. The person they pretended to be versus the person they knew they were at 3 a.m. when the masks came off and the lights went out. They tried to shame you for being emotional while they were drowning in repressed feelings. They tried to shame you for your past while theirs was a cemetery of burned bridges. They tried to shame you for not being enough while they were empty inside, desperately trying to fill themselves with other people's energy, other people's validation, other people's light. Every criticism they threw at you was soaked in the cologne of their own self-hatred. Every judgment they passed was signed with their own insecurities. You became their favorite target, not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to survive it. They knew instinctively that you could carry what they couldn't. They sensed that you had the depth to hold what they were too shallow to contain. So they kept pouring and pouring, thinking you were infinite, thinking you were indestructible, thinking you were too good to ever fight back. And for a while, you were. You absorbed it all like a supernatural sponge, thinking it was love, thinking it was your role, thinking if you just took enough of their pain, they'd finally be happy. But that's not how projection works, is it? The more you took, the more they gave. The more you carried, the more they dumped. The more you forgave, the more they transgressed. 'Cause they weren't trying to heal, they were trying to hide. They weren't looking for resolution. They were looking for a permanent place to store everything they couldn't face about themselves. You weren't their partner, their friend, their family. You were their emotional landfill, and they were never planning to stop dumping. But then you learned something. You learned that mirrors are more powerful than sponges. You learned that reflection requires no effort, while absorption drains you dry. You learn that showing someone their own behavior is more effective than trying to change it. You became a master of the redirect, the reframe, the reversal. When they said you always, you responded with facts about what they always did. When they said you never, you reminded them of what they never did. You stopped accepting their version of reality and started presenting evidence of the actual reality. The technology of reflection is simple but devastating. You don't argue, you don't defend, you don't engage with their projection. You simply show them what they're doing while they're doing it. You become the documentary filmmaker of their dysfunction. You become the court reporter of their chaos. You become the mirror that doesn't distort, doesn't judge, doesn't add commentary, just reflects, just shows, just reveals. And that pure reflection is more terrifying to them than any attack could ever be. You started using their own words against them, not as weapons, but as evidence. You started screenshots not for revenge, but for reality checks. You started remembering not to hold grudges, but to hold truth. And every time they tried to gaslight you, you had receipts. Every time they tried to rewrite history, you had records. Every time they tried to project their shame onto you, you had proof of whose shame it really was. You became dangerous not because you fought back, but because you remembered. I'm convinced if you became hurt, you would. They became dangerous not because you fought back, but because you remembered. Because you documented, because you refused to let them edit reality to suit their narrative. And here's what really broke them. You did it without emotion. You weren't angry anymore. You weren't hurt anymore. You weren't even disappointed anymore. You were just done. Done absorbing, done pretending, done playing along with their performance. You became clinical in your clarity, surgical in your precision, mathematical in your presentation of facts. You removed yourself from the equation and let their own behavior be the answer to every question they never wanted asked. When someone's been projecting for years and suddenly hits a mirror, the collapse is spectacular. First comes the shock, that moment of recognition when they see their own tactics being used as evidence against them. Then comes the denial, the frantic attempts to spin it, to reframe it, to make it about something else, anything else. Then comes the anger, the rage that you would dare to show them what they've been doing, the fury that you would have the audacity to not accept their projection anymore. But after the anger comes something worse, the panic, the realization that if you're not taking their projection anymore, they'll have to deal with it themselves. If you're not carrying their shame, they'll have to carry it. If you're not being their scapegoat, they'll have to be accountable. And that thought that possibility, that reality rushing toward them like a freight train. That's what makes them completely lose their composure. Because they built their entire identity around you being wrong so they could be right. And when you stopped playing that game, their whole world collapsed. You see them scrambling now, don't you? Trying to find new targets, trying to recruit others to see you the way they need you to be seen, trying to construct a narrative where they're still the hero and you're still the villain. But it's not working anymore because everyone else can see what you finally saw. That they're performing, that they're projecting, that they're the common denominator in all their own problems. The mirror you held up didn't just show them to themselves, it showed them to everyone. And the most beautiful part, you're not even there to see it. You walked away, remember? You delivered the truth and left. You didn't stay for the explosion. You didn't wait for the acknowledgement. You didn't need to see them finally understand what they'd been doing, because that was never your responsibility. Your only job was to stop accepting what wasn't yours, to stop carrying what wasn't your weight, to stop being the screen for their projection. And once you did that, once you became the mirror instead of the sponge, your work was done. Walking away after showing someone their own reflection is the ultimate power move. It says, I don't need to see your reaction to know I'm right. It says your revelation is your business, not mine. It says I'm not invested in your journey to self-awareness. It's the emotional equivalent of dropping a truth bomb and leaving before the explosion, and they can't handle it. They're used to you staying. They're used to you caring. They're used to you needing to see the impact of your words. But when you just leave, when you just go, that's when they realize you've truly evolved past them. You see, staying to watch would have made it about them again. It would have centered their reaction, their feelings, their process. But by walking away, you kept it about you, about your boundaries, about your peace, about your decision to no longer participate in their dysfunction. You made it clear that their shame is their problem to solve. Their projection is their pattern to break. Their healing is their journey to take. And you've got better things to do than watch someone else finally face what you've been facing all along. The walk away is also protection. Protection from their attempts to pull you back in. Protection from their manipulation tactics. Protection from the inevitable love bombing that comes when they realize they've lost their favorite projection screen. Because they will try to get you back. Not because they miss you, but because they miss having somewhere to put everything they can't face about themselves. They miss having someone to blame. They miss having someone to carry what they can't carry. But you're not available for that anymore. You're not in the business of being someone else's emotional dumping ground. Walking away is the period at the end of the sentence. It's the closing of the chapter. It's the final statement that says this dynamic is dead and cannot be resurrected. You're not angry. You're not vengeful. You're not even hurt anymore. You're just done. And that kind of done, that kind of complete disconnection from their chaos, that's what terrifies them most. Because they know there's no coming back from it. They know there's no manipulation that can undo it. They know they've lost not just you, but the version of themselves they were when they had you to project on. Oh, but they're not giving up easily, are they? Now come the desperate attempts to restore the old dynamic. First, they'll try guilt. How could you do this to me? As if showing them their own behavior was somehow worse than the behavior itself. I thought you were different. As if being different meant accepting their projection forever. You've changed. Yes, exactly, that's the point. You've changed from a sponge to a mirror, and they can't stand the reflection. Then comes the smear campaign. They'll tell everyone who will listen that you're the real problem, that you're manipulative, cruel, narcissistic, all the things they actually are. They'll project onto others what they can no longer project onto you. They'll try to recreate the narrative where they're the victim and you're the perpetrator. But something's different now. The story doesn't land like it used to. People are starting to notice the patterns, starting to see the inconsistencies, starting to recognize the projection for what it is. Next comes the hoovering, the sudden sweetness, the fake apologies that acknowledge nothing specific, the promises to change without any plan for how, the love bombing that feels more like emotional warfare than affection. They'll try to remind you of the good times. You know, those times when you were successfully absorbing all their shame without complaint. They'll try to trigger your empathy, your compassion, your tendency to forgive. But you see through it now. You see, it's not about wanting you back. It's about wanting their projection screen back. And when none of that works, when you maintain your position as mirror rather than sponge, that's when the extinction burst happens, the final desperate explosion of every manipulation tactic they know. They'll cycle through guilt, rage, love, hate, sometimes all in the same conversation. They'll throw everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. They'll exhaust themselves trying to restore a dynamic that you permanently destroyed. And when they finally realize it's over, when they finally accept that you're never going back to being their emotional landfill, that's when the real show begins. Look who they're talking about now. Oh, you heard me right. Sit down for this one, because what I'm about to tell you, what I'm about to reveal, it's going to crack something open inside you that you've been keeping locked for way too damn long. The people who destroyed you, the ones who laughed when you fell, the ones who ghosted you mid-crisis, the ones who spread lies about you while you were drowning. Yeah, those people, they just held a meeting. And guess what they were discussing? You. But here's the twist. They weren't planning your downfall this time. No. They were doing something far more twisted, far more telling, far more pathetic. They were discussing how to get close to you again, how to position themselves near your light, how to somehow, some way, crawl back into your orbit before you become completely untouchable. Because somewhere between your breakdown and your breakthrough, somewhere between your isolation and your evolution, you became something they never expected. You became the king, the queen, the force, the one. And now they're terrified. Terrified not because you're angry, but because you're indifferent. Terrified not because you want revenge, but because you don't need it. Terrified because the version of you they destroyed is gone. And the version standing here now doesn't even remember their names without effort. You outgrew the grudge. You outgrew the pain. You outgrew them. And that right there is what keeps them up at night. Because people can handle your hate, but they can't handle your peace. They can survive your anger, but they can't survive your absence. So yeah, they held a meeting. Maybe it wasn't in some conference room with a whiteboard and coffee, but it happened in group chats, in private calls. In those moments when your name comes up and the air gets heavy, they've been watching you, tracking you, monitoring your every move like you're some kind of phenomenon they can't explain. And you are the phenomenon, the anomaly, the one who wasn't supposed to make it out, but not only made it out, came back glowing, came back unbothered, came back untouchable. Let's be real for a second. Let's cut through all the noise and get to the raw truth. They didn't just hurt you, They studied you while they hurt you. They watched your reactions. They saw your tears. They heard your voice crack when you tried to explain yourself. And they smiled. They felt powerful. They felt in control. Because hurting someone who cares, someone who's vulnerable, someone who's real, that gave them a high they couldn't get anywhere else. You were their target practice, their emotional experiment, their proof that they mattered. But here's what they didn't account for. Here's the variable they didn't calculate. You didn't stay down. You didn't stay broken. You didn't become the cautionary tale they needed you to be, so they could feel better about their own mediocrity. Instead, you did something unforgivable in their eyes. You evolved. You transformed. You turned every scar into a lesson, every betrayal into fuel, every tear into liquid iron that rebuilt you from the inside out. And now you walk different, talk different, exist different, and they feel it. Oh, they feel it every single time your name comes up, every time someone mentions what you're doing now, every time they scroll past your energy and realize you're not even looking back. That's when the panic sets in. That's when the group chat lights up. That's when the meeting begins. Because you see, they thought destroying you would keep you beneath them forever. They thought they could keep you small, keep you desperate, keep you begging for the scraps of validation they used to throw you. But you stopped begging, and that's when you became dangerous. Dangerous not because you're violent or cruel. Dangerous because you're free. And free people, truly free people, they disrupt the entire system. They make everyone else question why they're still in chains. They make the comfortable uncomfortable. They make the fake feel exposed. They make the manipulators realize their tricks don't work anymore. And that's you now. You're the walking reminder that survival isn't just possible. It's inevitable for those who refuse to die on someone else's terms. You refused, and now they're paying the price. So what did they say in this meeting? Let me paint the picture for you. It started casual, like it always does. Someone mentioned your name, maybe in passing, maybe with a laugh, but then someone else said something. Did you see what they've been up to? Did you hear about that thing they did? And suddenly the energy shifted. Suddenly everyone got quiet for just a second too long, because the truth hit them all at once. You're not struggling anymore. You're not barely surviving. You're thriving. And worse, you're doing it without them. That's when the excuses started flying. I always knew they had it in them. I always supported them, you know. I never really had a problem with them. Lies. But necessary lies. Because if they admit the truth, if they admit they were wrong, if they admit they underestimated you, then they have to face the fact that they're not the heroes of this story. They're the villains. And villains don't get redemption arcs when the hero stops caring whether they exist or not. So they rewrite history. They gaslight themselves. They convince each other that they weren't that bad. But deep down, in the silence of their own minds, they know. They know exactly what they did. They know the nights you cried. They know the times you reached out and got nothing back. They know the moments you needed them, and they chose to turn away. They know. And that knowledge, that guilt, that shame, it's eating them alive, because you didn't just survive their cruelty. You became someone they now admire, someone they now envy, someone they now pathetically, desperately want to be associated with. And that's the most poetic justice of all. Here's the thing about people who destroy you, then try to crown you. They don't actually want to crown you. They want to control the narrative. They want to be close enough to you that when people ask about your success, they can say, I was there. I knew them. I helped them. They want to rewrite themselves into your story as supporting characters, when in reality, they were the obstacles, the antagonists, the ones who tried to bury you, but you didn't stay buried. You broke through the dirt, and now they want to pretend they planted the seed. Don't let them. Don't you dare let them. Because this meeting they had, this discussion about you, it's not about respect. It's not about love. It's not about genuine admiration. It's about access. It's about proximity to your light because their own has dimmed. It's about latching on to your energy because they've wasted theirs on pettiness, jealousy, and small-minded cruelty. They don't want to celebrate you. They want to drain you. They want to position themselves close enough that they can claim credit for your glow. And let me tell you something about these types of people. They'll show up with apologies that sound sincere. They'll send messages that seem heartfelt. They'll talk about how much they've grown, how much they've changed, how they realize now what they lost, and some of it might even be true. But here's what you need to remember. Changed people don't announce their transformation. They live it. Real growth doesn't need a press release. Real remorse doesn't come with conditions. If they've truly changed, they'll respect your distance. They'll honor your boundaries. They'll let you be free without trying to re-enter your life. But most of them haven't changed. Most of them are just reacting to your elevation. They're not sorry they hurt you. They're sorry you succeeded without them. They're not remorseful about the past. They're panicked about the future because they see where you're going, and they're terrified of being left behind. So they scramble. They reach out. They try to reconnect. They fish for responses. They drop hints. They orbit your energy like moths around a flame, hoping you'll let them back in. And some of you are tempted. You're tempted because you're kind, because you believe in second chances, because you remember how it felt to be rejected, and you don't want to do that to someone else. But let me remind you of something crucial. You didn't reject them. They rejected you. You didn't abandon them. They abandoned you. You didn't destroy the relationship. They did. And now that you've rebuilt yourself, now that you've become someone worth knowing, they want back in. Not because they value you, because they fear irrelevance. And your presence makes them feel relevant again. So here's what you do. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You don't engage. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't justify. You just keep moving. Keep building. Keep rising. Because the greatest response to people who tried to destroy you is a life so full, so abundant, so powerful that their absence doesn't even register. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to prove anything. Your existence, your success, your peace, that's the proof. That's the statement. That's the crown they'll never touch. Let them have their meetings. Let them whisper your name with that mixture of regret and envy. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them analyze every post, every move, every word. Because while they're obsessing over you, you're not even thinking about them. You've moved beyond their frequency. You've transcended their level. You're operating in a realm they can't access, can't understand, can't infiltrate. And that's where you stay. Untouchable, unreachable, undeniable. Now let's talk about what really happens in these meetings, these secret discussions about you. Because it's not just admiration. It's not just regret. There's something darker underneath. There's resentment. Resentment that you made it without their permission. Resentment that you didn't need their approval. Resentment that you proved them wrong, because when they tried to break you, they believed they were exposing your weakness. They thought they were revealing the fraud, but all they did was reveal themselves, and now they have to live with that. They have to live with the fact that they were wrong about you, that their judgment was flawed, that their cruelty was unjustified, and worse, they have to watch you succeed while they're stuck in the same patterns, the same drama, the same small existence. You grew. They didn't. You evolved. They stayed static. You became more. They became bitter. And that bitterness, that's what really drives these meetings. Because if they can get close to you again, if they can somehow associate themselves with your success, maybe they can convince themselves they weren't wrong. Maybe they can tell themselves they always believed in you. But you know the truth. You felt their absence. You remember their silence. You carry the scars from their words, their actions, their betrayals. And while forgiveness is noble, reconnection is optional. You don't owe them access to the version of you they tried to kill. You don't owe them a seat at the table they flipped over. You don't owe them anything, because you paid your dues. You survived their storm. You rebuilt in their absence. And now the life you have, the peace you have, the power you have, it's yours, earned, protected, sacred. So when they reach out, and they will, when they try to slide back in with casual messages and friendly gestures, remember this. They're not reaching out to you. They're reaching out to the idea of you, the successful you, the glowing you, the untouchable you. They don't want the real you. They couldn't handle the real you when you were vulnerable. They can't handle the real you now that you're strong. They want the version they can brag about knowing, the version that makes them look good by association. But that's not a relationship. That's exploitation. And you've had enough of being exploited. Enough of being used. Enough of being the supporting character in someone else's redemption arc. This is your story. You're the main character. And in your story, the people who tried to destroy you don't get redemption. They don't get closure. They don't get a happy ending with you. They get to watch from a distance. They get to live with their choices. They get to see what they lost. And that is the ending they deserve. Because here's the thing they don't understand. You didn't become this person to prove them wrong. You didn't rise to make them regret. You didn't succeed to get revenge. You did it because you had no other choice. You did it because staying down meant dying. You did it because something inside you, something primal and unbreakable, refused to let their cruelty be the end of your story. You rose because rising was the only option. And now that you're here, now that you're standing in your power, They want to claim they always knew you would, but they didn't. They bet against you. They counted you out. They wrote you off. And now they're scrambling to rewrite history because your success makes them look foolish. It exposes their lack of vision. It reveals their inability to recognize real strength when it's right in front of them. And that's not your problem. That's theirs. You don't need to make them feel better about their mistakes. You don't need to ease their guilt. You don't need to absolve them. You need to protect your peace. And sometimes, most times, protecting your peace means keeping certain people at a permanent distance. So yeah, they held a meeting. They discussed you. They debated how to approach you. They strategized their comeback. And while they were doing all that, you were living, you were building, you were becoming, you were thriving. You were doing exactly what they said you couldn't do. You were proving that their opinions, their judgments, their cruelty, none of it had the power to define you. You defined yourself. You chose yourself. You saved yourself. And now you're reaping the rewards of that choice. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them regret. But don't let them back in. Because the door you closed on them, that wasn't cruelty. That was self-preservation. That wasn't revenge. That was wisdom. That wasn't you being cold. That was you being smart. You learned the hard way that not everyone deserves access to you. You learned that some people only love you when you're broken, because your brokenness makes them feel whole. But you're not broken anymore, and they can't handle that. So they'll try. Oh, they'll try. They'll use mutual friends. They'll create situations where you might run into each other. They'll like your posts. They'll leave comments. They'll do anything to get your attention. And every time they do, you'll feel that little tug, that little voice that says, maybe I should respond. Maybe I should be the bigger person. Maybe I should give them another chance. But let me remind you of something. Being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people who hurt you back into your life. It means being big enough to let them go without bitterness. You can forgive them and still keep them at a distance. You can wish them well and still protect your energy. You can acknowledge they're human and still choose not to engage, because forgiveness is for you. Reconnection is for them, and you don't owe them that. You don't owe them your time, your energy, your attention, or your presence. You owe yourself protection. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the space to continue growing without the people who tried to stunt that growth. Here's what they'll never understand. Your success isn't about them. Your healing isn't about them. Your transformation isn't about them. They're not the main plot. They're barely a footnote. They're the obstacle you overcame, the challenge you conquered, the test you passed. And now they want to be part of the victory celebration. But victories aren't celebrated with the people who tried to ensure your defeat. Victories are celebrated with the people who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. The people who showed up. The people who stayed. The people who earned their place in your life. And if there's no one like that in your life right now, that's okay too, because you showed up for yourself. You believed in yourself. You stayed with yourself. And that's enough. That's more than enough. You are enough. And the people from your past who are now trying to crown you, they don't get to do that. You already crowned yourself. You already claimed your throne. You already took your power back. And that crown, that throne, that power, it's not for sale. It's not for rent. It's not up for negotiation. So let them hold all the meetings they want. Let them discuss you until their voices go hoarse. Let them strategize and plan and scheme, because none of it matters. None of it touches you. None of it affects the trajectory you're on. You're ascending. You're evolving. You're becoming something they can't comprehend. And from up here, their meetings look like exactly what they are. Desperate attempts by irrelevant people to become relevant again by association with someone who outgrew them years ago. And you know what the most beautiful part of all this is? You don't even hate them anymore. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're not plotting revenge. You're just indifferent. And indifference, true indifference, that's the final stage of healing. That's when you know you've truly moved on, because you can hear their names without feeling anything. You can see their faces without your heart racing. You can acknowledge their existence without it affecting your peace. They're just people now. People who made choices. People who lost something valuable. People who will have to live with that. Want to be part of the victory celebration. But victories aren't celebrated with the people who tried to ensure your defeat. Victories are celebrated with the people who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. The people who showed up. The people who stayed. The people who earned their place in your life. And if there's no one like that in your life right now, that's okay too, because you showed up for yourself. You believed in yourself. You stayed with yourself. And that's enough. That's more than enough. You are enough. And the people from your past who are now trying to crown you, they don't get to do that. You already crowned yourself. You already claimed your throne. You already took your power back. And that crown, that throne, that power, it's not for sale. It's not for rent. It's not up for negotiation. So let them hold all the meetings they want. Let them discuss you until their voices go hoarse. Let them strategize and plan and scheme, because none of it matters. None of it touches you. None of it affects the trajectory you're on. You're ascending. You're evolving. You're becoming something they can't comprehend. And from up here, their meetings look like exactly what they are. Desperate attempts by irrelevant people to become relevant again by association with someone who outgrew them years ago. And you know what the most beautiful part of all this is? You don't even hate them anymore. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're not plotting revenge. You're just indifferent. And indifference, true indifference, that's the final stage of healing. That's when you know you've truly moved on, because you can hear their names without feeling anything. You can see their faces without your heart racing. You can acknowledge their existence without it affecting your peace. They're just people now. People who made choices. People who lost something valuable. People who will have to live with that.